Hello everyone, and welcome to LEGO Rewind, where we take another look at old retired LEGO themes. It's time to round off another season, and I know this episode's kinda long, but I hope you'll stick around till the end, cause we have a lot to catch up on, way more than last season. But I wouldn't feel right just recapping stuff you've already seen again, and decided to at least start with something that would make this episode feel more unique. Behold, Seatron. If this looks unfamiliar to you, it should, because it was never released. Yeah, this theme was aborted, there's not really another word for it, and what potential it had. It's essentially Ice Planet 2002, but on an ocean world. It's everything I love about two of my favorite things. It sure would have stood out among M-Tron, Blacktron, and all the other Trons of the day. The look isn't far off from Aquazone, it's just a little clunkier, more down to earth in a way, and the vehicles seem to have surprisingly light protection, making me wonder what the water pressure is. And I like the idea of an underwater monorail. The fact that it's completely exposed and not inside an airlocked tunnel just makes it more interesting. And I like the shape of it with a little bubble at either end for a person. Probably the theme's most defining features are its unusual minifigs, which LEGO called Sea People. Man, these would have been revolutionary. To this day, most animal or alien LEGO people will have a unique head/shirt, but this is a uniquely molded body and legs. The only things it really has in common with human minifigs are the arms. The flippers even have a cut to make room for any studs in front of them if they're standing on a plate. What a fascinating creature. I'd like to think LEGO wouldn't have made them antagonists and it'd be a Life on Mars deal well over a decade before that, with the aliens, us, working together with them. Think of how amazing that would be. But I wouldn't put it past LEGO to just make the two races fight, assuming these were the Sea People's craft. They look like many other builds we later see in Aquazone, evil painted eyes and all. And look at that fin some of them have. It looks almost exactly like a sail that wouldn't appear for another decade or so. According to some, LEGO at the time decided that they, or their customers, just weren't ready for aliens yet. Sure. Had the theme gone ahead, this may have been one of the last monorails we'd ever see, since supposedly LEGO outsourced the track pieces from another company, and that company went belly up before LEGO could ever get the rights or patents to those pieces, so no more monorails. But that didn't stop them from leaving an impact, as the creators of these lovely mocks can attest to. It's cool to see the real thing materialize. And, well, that's all I really have to say about Seatron. It was never released, what do you expect? But while we're on the subject of underwater themes, in that episode I said Atlantis was released in 2011. It was not. Well, the last wave was, but Atlantis began in 2010. I'm surprised nobody else ever caught that, especially since I subtly corrected myself last episode. In the dinosaurs episode, I thought the T-Rex was too small. Somebody corrected me, and I said in the first season finale that it was just the right size compared to minifigs. I have since been corrected again by someone else, and it seems that it is a tad too small, but still much closer than I first thought. Only off by a stud or two maybe? And going back to Life on Mars, there's a gag I wish I'd thought to include at the time. Remember how this was one of the first space lines to include more than one faction, but the story wasn't about them fighting? As opposed to later lines which focus on conflict in a box, almost always including a good guy and bad guy element in each set? Well, there is one Life on Mars set that includes both a human and a Martian together. Alien Encounter. But wait, if this was his planet, who's the alien? And that's the gag. Anyway, Vikings. This resonated much more strongly than I was expecting it to. I'm glad I'm not the only one who appreciates how unique Vikings was. A few people brought up a great suggestion for a new theme based on Greek mythology. Maybe sort of a mix of this and Pharaoh's Quest. Could you imagine it? Minotaurs and griffins, all the gods. I mean, the actual stories may be a tad too raunchy for LEGO, but they can just make their own simplified, family-friendly take on the Greek myth. Just think of all the spectacles they could bring to life with today's building techniques, all those creatures that were scrapped before Vikings launched. Something along those lines could easily be done now. I think this is an amazing idea, but the only way LEGO would ever do that is with a movie license, cause that's their bread and butter these days. One thing I've come to appreciate even more about Vikings is the dragons. I already gushed about them then, how intricately built up they are instead of just being a couple of giant pieces, but for all the different types of dragons we've seen in the over a decade since Vikings, I realized the dragons from elves may be the best. I've gushed about these too, but just this Christmas, one of my little cousins wanted to show me a dragon she was given. She made me proud when she pointed out it is in fact a wyvern. I sat down to watch her build it, and my word, finally seeing one of these materialize in person, I am enamored with these creatures. Some of the coolest, most complete animals LEGO's ever designed, and they make a good spiritual successor to the dragons from Vikings. Why won't LEGO build their dinosaurs this way? Sure, you could say those giant pieces bring the price down, but they don't seem to be doing that. At all. In the Insectoids episode, someone pointed out an Easter egg in one of the Alien Conquest sets. See that name on the jet? Nin. Some of you may remember him. He was quite the influential Marcus in the late 2000s, whipping up all sorts of crazy cool ship designs. I think this one is my favorite. It's such a work of art. In 2010, the LEGO community mourned his passing, and a year later, LEGO themselves decided to acknowledge him in their own products with his tribute. And to their credit, this does look like the kind of ship he designed, within all the technical restrictions of official sets, mind you. It's just nice to see them immortalize him this way. But they aren't the only ones. There's an entire group of Flickr users inspired by Nin's work, still designing their own unique ships in his honor to this day. That's beautiful. And of course, best wishes to his wife and kids. I imagine they understand people's appreciation of him better than anyone else could. Not much to say about Arctic, although someone did highlight the potential for such a theme crossed with elements of adventures. Imagine a crew of explorers finding the ruins of some lost civilization in a place like that. Pyramids or temples and ancient technology, or maybe they'll just find the thing. Again, another great idea from fans that LEGO really should jump on. One thing I neglected to mention in the sports episode is the DFB series of minifigures released in 2016. A German team of soccer or football players. And these figs have quite the level of detail, including printing on the sides of the legs. That is not something you ever used to see. I especially like how distinguished the faces are without dipping into that uncanny valley the NBA designs did, keeping true to that timelessly basic, one-size-fits-all look that's just a part of LEGO's image. Sorry I didn't mention them before, but I honestly thought I'd somehow imagine these, which is weird since I'm not a sports guy. Man, the trains episode was tricky to edit. It's one of my shorter episodes, but there are so many trains to look through. It became this rapid-fire slideshow. So many quick cuts, it hurt some people's eyes. I actually took it down a few times to add even more trains, and people are still pointing out other trains I forgot to squeeze in for a quarter of a second. And heck, here's another super old train with car tires I didn't know existed until just a few days ago. Maybe I should have just made the episode longer, found more to say so it wouldn't be so heckin' dense. There were also numerous requests that I review Project G1, but we don't talk about that here. And despite my best efforts, I got facts wrong. For example, the engine that performed as the Hogwarts Express was not the Jacobite, its name is Olton Hall. So many people thought they were the first to point that out. Thank you, but I'm glad I can put that beast to bed. Also, I made it sound like LEGO only started recreating real locomotives in the early 2000s, but it seems they'd been doing that all along, and I just didn't recognize them. Whoops. The Discovery episode isn't one of my better performing ones, but I expected that. It's a pretty obscure line that was only around for a little bit and not everyone's as into it as I am. Still learned a couple of things though. For example, the Saturn V model's piece count is the same as the year it was launched, then man landed on the moon, 1969. Cheeky LEGO designers making the stars align to pull that off. Some people brought up a valuable point that, now that I think about it, has me a little disappointed too. LEGO's NASA-inspired products really only focus on American spacecraft, and while I imagine it isn't easy to get licenses to, say, Soviet satellites like Sputnik, it would be cool to be able to build other nations' spacecraft. We have a couple, but we could do better. There were also some stylized shuttles that were LEGO's take on NASA and everything but name that I just couldn't think of much to say about, as much as people love them. I considered dedicating an entire separate episode to the spaceport theme, but I just imagine myself repeating much of what I said for Discovery. Sorry. Interesting little factoid though, apparently life on Mars is a continuation of Spaceport, as BB, one of the astronauts, is a kid who won a contest for an all-expense-paid trip to Mars. It's an extremely light connection, but it's still cool to me. In the Halloween episode, I forgot yet another series of collectible minifigures. Series 14, Monsters. How did I miss these? They're right up my alley. You've got great homages to The Fly and both Little Shops of Horrors, and then some more original stuff like a zombie cheerleader who even in death looks chipper as ever, this normal dude hoping the monsters don't realize it's just a costume, and one of Frankenstein's monsters turned rock star. That is its own flavor of brilliant. Also, while I complimented the one in Monster Fighter's head held together by pins, I think the studio's monster with a zipper on his forehead is much funnier. And what is with these names? Wolf Guy? Squarefoot? Monster Scientist? Like what, is a scientist himself a monster? I guess so. My favorite minifig in the series may be the Spider Lady. The webbed cape, her babies crawling all over her in her hair. Ugh. very Halloween. And as you can imagine, these go great with monster fighters. They fit right in, really adding to Lord Vampire's numbers. This guy's just going along with it as long as he can without being found out. And here are some appropriate brickheads, simply because someone's going to bring them up if I don't. Moving on. I remember struggling to find a game that I thought would make fitting background music for Knight's Kingdom, but recently I realized there was one staring me in the face that would have been more appropriate and more hype than Metal Slug 7. Sonic and the Black Knight. Say what you will about that game, that soundtrack was the best part of it and would have been perfect for this episode. If I could do it over, I can see myself featuring Deep Woods, Crystal Cave, Molten Mine, Shrouded Forest, Great Megalith, and Dragon's Lair. I recommend giving all of these a listen, especially that last one. But you know what? I've been using a lot of Sonic music in the last few episodes, and I don't want to over-rely on that. I learned some interesting things about Cedric the Bull after Knight's Kingdom went up. Unlike villains like Vladik who just want power for power's sake, Cedric has quite the backstory and motivation. He's actually a prince from another land that was divided between his 12 brothers after their father died, leaving no land left for him to rule. Bitter as he was, Cedric isn't the kind of dishonorable guy to raise a sword against family. He's not gonna kill one of his brothers and take their castle. No, he'll take over some other schmuck's kingdom, biding his time in the dark forest. While he was there, he found Weasel, this happy chap, all alone and raised him as his own. And even if he wins his campaign against King Leo, rather than slay him or imprison him and his family, Cedric will just let them go, find somewhere else to call home like he had to. Like, all things considered, Cedric really doesn't sound like that bad of a guy. He has actual reasons for doing what he does and isn't just some senseless killer. And it really makes his portrayal in Lego Island 2 feel strange. This more vile Cedric is a completely different character, and giving him a castle removes his entire motivation for stealing Leo's. It just makes him another shallow villain like Vladik. Special thanks to Robonaut for bringing all of this to my attention. As for Knight's Kingdom 2, turns out the two evil knights in Year 3, Dracus and Karzan, did side with Vladik willingly, making them the most complex characters in Knight's Kingdom 2, which isn't saying much. It was just all the other soldiers who were brainwashed. On another note, similar to Atlantis, Nexo Knights is a line I liked well enough before, but didn't deeply appreciate until I covered it for the show and took a closer look at it. I still don't get why people are so against this aesthetic. If you don't think the show communicated it well, fine. But I think the sets themselves do a good enough job telling a story on their own. We have steampunk, we have diesel punk, the latter of which imagines today still looking like the 50s. Is it really that far-fetched for a medieval kingdom to advance technologically but simply never change? Kingdoms rise and fall out of style. But what if there was one that persisted long enough to develop holograms, AI, energy weapons, and smart devices, but over the centuries continued to cling to the same fashion and overall societal structure? I don't know, it's just a fun idea for a setting to try out, and I think it works very well in this case. It's why I think the final year's Borg zombie vampire villains are much more appropriate for the theme than fireworks or rock gargoyles. Those are pretty standard fantasy fare, but these guys really fit the technology of Nexo Knights and raise the stakes by turning it against them, spreading their influence over the land like a computer virus. I mean, really, that's what the theme should have been all about. Heck, some of the technologies we use today are just more advanced versions of things that first appeared in Star Trek. There's a trip and a half. Oh my gosh, how cool would it be if Nexo Knights had a villain like Cedric? Not Cedric himself, just someone with a similar backstory, equipped with this infector technology. Now that would be epic. But for all my gushing, I never got any sets. But surprise, surprise, my brother gave me the Tech Wizard Showdown for Christmas, and my word, now I feel bad for completely passing up this line until the last second. Well, not really, I've had my own projects to fund that are more important than toys. But that seems to be such a common trend with Nexo Knights. People look at it and think it's kinda cool, but don't really understand the beauty of its cyber nightpunk feel or its builds until it's staring them in the face. And I'm not the only one who's realized this. Pictures do not do it justice. You need to have things like this in hand and build it yourself to really comprehend the beauty of it. These are some of the most inventive, stylish designs Lego's ever put together. And if there was any doubt in my mind before of how much effort went into this, there isn't now. He also managed to track down a copy of A Life on Mars that I had as a kid and lost, completely sealed up, just floating around for 18 years, the time it takes to raise someone. I'm gonna do it. The piece is untouched, the print's immaculate, though I did end up adding a couple of pieces of my own to finally give it knees, because I just have to modify every Lego set I ever get. It was funny looking through this old catalog and realizing I feature just about everything from that time in this series already. I understand it may pain some of you to see a perfectly sealed box like this marred, but toys are meant to be played with. Thank you, bro. Mindstorms is a special episode to me. Tried out some new editing techniques to give the visuals a more relaxing vibe with an actual background, better pacing, snappier delivery. It's one of my personal favorites from this season. I was happy to hear from quite a few people who did in fact grow up with Mindstorms to become professional software developers and engineers. That just made my day. I love reading people's stories like that. It was also interesting to hear of people's personal experiences using Mindstorms in class. Some schools are still employing older Mindstorms for their students to get a feel for. Also, I may have been a tad premature declaring Mindstorms dead. I thought Boost was created to replace it, but given it's a very dumbed down version made for little kids, people are still holding out for Mindstorms proper to return one day, like it always seems to. I don't know, the last version was a while ago. Having two such lines each running at their own level would be sweet, creates more options for aspiring builders of any age. The Western episode is polarizing. One thing people have told me they appreciate about LEGO Rewind is that I don't just talk about the sets most of the time. If I was okay stopping there, I may as well stream myself scrolling through a brickset listing or read a Wikipedia article word for word. I show mocks, the lore, the marketing, and even how they fit into the real world of the time. The show isn't just about archiving LEGO sets, but their history, their backstory, what inspired them. So, in keeping with that tradition, I address some real world politics concerning Native or Indian Americans, and a small portion of my audience slit my throat for bringing politics into the LEGO fantasy show. Some misinterpreted my touching upon cultural themes as condemning the Western line, but the thing they miss is that I actually like Western more because of that broader cultural context, for how decently it portrays its very politically loaded subject matter. And while it might not matter as much to a company based in Denmark, over here in America where I live, it's a pretty touchy issue that I just wouldn't feel right ignoring in this climate. I made an entire follow-up that was going to be a part of this video script, and if you want to hear everything I have to say about that, there's a link in the description. All I want to add here as a final note is I think brushing off the original definition of PC I brought up as irrelevant or outdated to focus on sensationalized knee-jerk clickbaity jargon is unwise, because the powerful members of our society, politicians, lobbyists, and the like, can only benefit from us forgetting how political correctness applies to them. As long as we're at each other's throats over who's more offended, over someone on a college campus dyeing their hair pink, basically as long as we're fighting each other, we're not fighting them. That's why I take the stance I do. When someone says don't look up, look down, watch out, because that's when they get you. I didn't mention the LEGO Movie's Western themed sets because, I don't know, there were only a couple of them and I felt like I'd have to cover the entire LEGO Movie theme then. But I do like the Western themed sets. The Lone Ranger theme was a better part of a decade ago, and the LEGO Movie wasn't long after that, but you kinda get a glimpse at what could be pulled off with the modern building techniques that were just starting to creep in with the LEGO Movie. And I especially like the cowboys being robots. It has that same appeal Next to Nice does to me, that mishmash of advanced technology and old-fashioned trappings. Also brought to my attention by Maniac for Bricks after I commended LEGO for not making the natives literally red-skinned. Well, you see these old-school figures that are basically a stack of bricks with a head on top? Before the first true minifigures were born, there were a lot of these in the 70s. Mostly families, firefighters, policemen, cowboys, and gosh darn it, LEGO. You had one job. I kid, but these did not age well. And that brings us to girl themes. I'd like to apologize to the NBs, that's non-binary in my audience, for not including them when I opened the episode by saying hello girls and boys. I was poking fun at the typical boys and girls opening you usually hear in things because it makes the boys sound more important when they get the top billing, so I wanted to switch it around for this episode and was not considerate of other genders. Again, sorry. It does strike me as funny, the need to distinguish natives and girls from default norm LEGO in some ways, breaking away from that one-size-fits-all look. But as contentious as they are in the community, as long as things like the mini dolls are around, they make a great canvas for the types of character designs LEGO doesn't often attempt with minifigs. As much as I like Exoforce, including its art, I think the elves themselves capture that anime look much more smoothly. They just look like really nicely designed anime characters to me. Now if only they could have nearly as much articulation as standard minifigs. And again, the Martians have all the same problems, and I still love them for some reason. Everything on this show goes back to Mars, I swear. I am sorta glad we have them at any rate, but I am not happy that Elves has been canned. Earlier this season I bemoaned licensed themes taking over and listed Elves as one of the few evergreen products LEGO still has, along with City, Friends, those two are kinda the same, and Ninjago. I didn't expect Elves to go on forever, But with that gone, LEGO's pool of original properties continues to shrink, drowned out by outside voices. But hey, at least we have Voltron, right? At least we have Overwatch! Those are good products like anything LEGO designs, but seeing all the care that's gone into developing lines like Elves and Nexo Knights from the ground up, and with nothing on the way to replace them, it makes me more than a little sad. The licenses have just taken over, completely. I grew up at a time when we were spoiled by a wealth of cool in-house stuff that was pure LEGO, really seeing what they could do when they didn't have to fit the mold of something that already exists. And I look at these lines that keep dying and wonder what countless other possibilities could have been explored over the years. But I guess that's just not what LEGO's about anymore, and I better get with the program and start spending more money on pop culture fluff like everyone else. On a lighter note, a couple of people wondered if elves could be considered a castle theme. And you know what? If forest men can be considered such, I see no reason not to christen elves a part of that lineup. It has plenty of castles at any rate. Also, I wanted to include this image somewhere in that episode. It's been on my computer for like a year and I couldn't think of a gag for it. Oh wait, gag. To be clear, I don't think gender toys shouldn't exist or that boys and girls aren't different in any ways. I just want them to have options. In the event that they do reach into the other lane, we shouldn't slap their hand and tell them no! How many stories are there of insecure parents with unresolved childhood issues of their own pulling a boy set out of their daughter's hand or a girl set away from their son and grabbing something appropriate, something they want instead? Making a fool of themselves in public and humiliating their kids with their spectacle might not sound like a big deal, but that can screw a kid up. We don't know what kinds of conversations they're having with their parents in private, and it's not our business. But I think it's unfair for grown adults to force that kind of baggage onto kids, to perpetuate this cycle of insecurity and ensure those hangups will survive another generation. Kids want to fit in, they want approval, they don't want to be weird, so don't make them feel weird for developing an interest in the wrong toys. People our age with cars and money who can just take ourselves to a store and buy whatever we want, it's arrogant, it's too easy for us to say kids have that much choice when you ignore peer pressure and power dynamics, or LEGO usually showing boys and their dads building together, but rarely letting their mothers or sisters participate unless it's something incredibly specific like friends, sending an implicit message, whether intentional or not. But as some have pointed out, there are far more women minifigs in lines like City than there were when lines like Friends were new and City was quite the sausage fest. We've got female baristas, female crane operators, as if to say to girls, yeah, it's okay, you can play with this. So yeah, it's nice to see LEGO become less of a boys club and something that anyone can feel okay playing with. At least in my mind, that's what LEGO should be. And it's nice to see something of a return to form creeping in. We'll just see how 2019 plays out. But there's another elephant in the room that needs to be addressed. The reason for Young Justice being cancelled. The Girl Themes episode was much better received than the Western episode, so don't think I'm responding to some backlash, but I'm bringing this up because, believe it or not, I do not want to spread misinformation. And a few commenters were kind enough to point me in the right direction. Paul Dini's words regarding network executives not wanting girls watching their shows, among other similar remarks, were taken out of context years ago and not necessarily referring to Young Justice itself, as he wasn't even working for Cartoon Network at the time. According to numerous people who were part of the show, it was due to toy sales, but not in the way you might think. Sometimes with a show like Thundercats 2011, the production values are so insanely high that even if you manage to sell a lot of toys, you need to sell more than a lot just to break even. Astronomical amounts. But from the sound of it, Young Justice didn't even have the chance to fail. It's because the Green Lantern movie bombed so hard, stores didn't even want to carry any DC merch for a while, which seems a tad extreme and surely impacted any potential toy sales. So if you were a girl looking for Miss Martian toys back in the day and couldn't find any, well, there's one reason. I'm not completely sure who to believe. Even now, I can't rule out that the people on the show might be protecting themselves in a way. I always thought claims of too many girls were just Cartoon Network trying to cover their own backside because they didn't want to admit to poor toy sales. Which, like, come on. Who would seriously think that sounds better? The first 2 minutes of that video were me trying to call them out for what I already thought were BS excuses that I thought they really made. And now I have to call myself out. But I still stand by my comments about the toy industry and skittish network executives because many of them did, at least until recently, and many still do operate with a strong boys club mentality. Paul Dini's words do hold water even if he was talking about any other network. Understand, it's most toy manufacturers' dream to corner a specific market and squeeze it for all it's worth year after year, without having to change or adapt. And if they get their way, in their ideal dystopia, we would work for them in a way, just waiting for them to spoon-feed us their junk that they decide we should buy, putting the cart before the horse. And it's not them being evil or anything, it's just capitalism kind of working backwards, or as it's supposed to, depending on who you ask. Segregated marketing, gendered marketing is still a thing. It would be a stretch to say they don't want any girls watching their toy commercials, but they aren't seen as nearly as profitable as 6 to 11-year-old boys. So if these entities are aiming at boys and girls watch but not enough boys do, then they've missed their target audience. Cancelled. It's a thing that happens. Now, I'm not sorry for falling for a rumor that so many people have, but I am sorry for pushing a rumor that may in fact discourage girls from watching Young Justice Outsiders because they're worried they'll get it cancelled if they watch it. And that's not a mindset I want to spread. So please, support the show. Streaming is the future for shows like this. It has a second chance, so let's not waste it. In spite of everything, I'm still pretty proud of this episode, but this season was kind of a mixed bag for me. I feel like the highs may have been higher than season 1 ever got, but the lows were also lower, and I'm not talking about Western or whatever, I stand by that. But I found myself obsessing over things like audio quality, trying to churn things out at a consistent pace, checking every shot for stray frames, doing dozens of recording takes because I hated my delivery most of the time, hated the sound of my own voice. It's become less about simply expressing what I love about LEGO and trying to do it in a polished way. Sure, my audio might be a little better, I'll throw in a background I worked pretty hard on, sometimes I'll render a video several times, changing one tiny little thing imperceptible to everyone but me and make myself sick. And when it's all done, I still find things to hate in my own work. I'll still notice a stray frame or think, I could have phrased that better. And when I get things wrong, like I did in Girl Themes or Trains or my Sonic Mania review, I really start to despise myself as a content creator. I wonder if I really should stop commenting on LEGO's connections to the real world since I'm apparently so bad at it. And yeah, just scroll through brickset or Brickopedia and call that an episode. I'll never be satisfied, not really. And it can't be helped that most of my favorite themes, the ones I really wanted to talk about, I already covered in Season 1. Just look at how colorful the thumbnails for Season 1 are compared to Season 2. Like I said, flipping through that catalog made me realize I've already blown through just about everything from that very specific era of LEGO I wanted to capture. And the longer the show continues, the more I'll be reaching for something to cover, something to say. And it's only a matter of time before I'm phoning it in and the quality takes a nosedive. I even stopped showing mocks for a while, and that was another thing people loved about earlier episodes. With Space Police, I didn't want to just piddle out another episode for the sake of finishing it. I really wanted it to be great. I wanted it to feel like a Season 1 episode, and I hope it shows. That said, as usual, I got some things wrong. The random criminals are part of a faction of sorts, the Black Hole Gang, which is something of a legit threat, and as dozens of people pointed out, Blacktron does exist in Space Police 3 in some form, as we see this guy wearing a Blacktron 2 uniform. Whether they're hand-me-downs because Blacktron's smaller than it used to be, or it's some kind of prequel where they haven't gotten big yet, we get a few homages to them, the biggest being the later Next to Knights villains. I mean, come on. That has Blacktron written all over it. It actually makes a fitting next step for them, transitioning from yellow to yellowish green to green. And I guess this makes the Knights an Ice Planet homage, with the blue and orange and sometimes white. Some suggested Space Police 3 is a Men in Black scenario, which I've thought myself from time to time. But if this is a prequel, the total absence of aliens in Space Police 1 and 2 does not bode well. But you know, despite all my poking fun at it, I do like Space Police 3. My personal favorite set is Hyperspeed Pursuit. Both those vehicles are stunners, and you get both ends of the play pattern with them. I think it's the best example of the new look they were going for. But I can look at almost any Space Police 3 set and say, oh yeah, that looks cool. It's only when you look through multiple sets that you pick up on this consistent pattern of brutal imperialist human supremacists beating down the disenfranchised aliens. But at least the official stop-motion skits show some alien civilians who seem to be doing fine. There is some concept art of human villains. Looking very Seatron there, guys. And supposedly LEGO did consider for a time a mix of some heroic aliens and villainous humans. But when it came time for playtesting, the kids had none of it, naturally deciding that the humans were good and the monsters were bad. They just wanted an incredibly simple black and white story with a clear, obvious hero and villain for instant gratification. So that's why Space Police 3 looks the way it does. Supposedly. You have to take this stuff with a grain of salt. Anyone can say, oh, my uncle works for Nintendo, you know the drill. But it wouldn't surprise me if this was true. And that's pretty sad. Lastly, the Nindroid mech dragon from Ninjago is having an interesting feature, a cage for Lloyd that seems to be a homage to Space Police 1. And that's it, we're all caught up on this scene. See how long that lasts. Like last season, we covered around 30 themes, maybe even more this time. But now to get real for a minute. Everything I said at the end of Season 1 still goes here. In fact, it's gotten worse. Look, I get inundated with constant requests to review Hero Factory or Batman or Indiana Jones from overexcited people who don't respect my time barking at me to cover their favorite theme, and sometimes I'm rude to those people, saying things like I'll get to it when I darn well feel like it. But for all I know, some of these people may in fact be kids, and with that in mind, I need to apologize and I need to make something clear. I do this series for me, not just that, but mostly. I'm not making ad money from it or Patreon money. I do not benefit in some tangible way from making these videos. They actually take time and energy away from all my other projects I could be doing. I just want to talk about the themes I'm interested in, and people asking me or pressuring me or ordering me to cover their favorite themes, telling me what I should do, stresses me out. Like it ruins my day. I get that people just get really excited for this show and might sincerely think that the first person to ask, but it makes us stop being a fun, relaxing hobby I can come back to now and again, and turns it into a job I'm expected to do for free. Ew, especially stuff like Batman, where what am I supposed to say? These builds are good. They look like Batman. The end. I can't just produce some spirited and enlightened take on everything, and if I can't, then it's just not worth doing. You see, I want these videos to be good, and if I make videos like that, they're almost guaranteed to suck. I believe that content creators should cover the things they're genuinely passionate about and can do proper justice to. It's less about the subject matter itself and more about the creator injecting themselves into it. If I was making money from this and wanted to milk it dry, sure, I could just keep digging up other themes to say something about. Or maybe not cover so many in one episode, you know? Just stretch it out as many episodes as I could while I waited for the next paycheck. But I'd be phoning it in. It'd feel forced and boring, cause I'd be bored. It'd just be lip service for the sake of having another theme half-heartedly squeezed into the title. Like, yay, there's an episode about Indiana Jones. So what? That's not what I want to do. And if I ever do cover themes that people keep asking for, like Hero Factory, it'll be because I wanted to do it then, not because I was asked to, however nicely. So please respect that. And please respect that something like Batman doesn't need some pleb like me artificially propping it up. Batman will be just fine without a rewind. It doesn't need that pedestal lifting it up. Though now I have another side of this problem. People asking me to make episodes about themes I've already done. Yeah, I've covered so many we've reached that point. Just before you ask, please take a few seconds to skim through the playlist and take it for granted that if you see an old theme in the thumbnail, you'll see the modern counterpart included with it. Agents and Ultra Agents are in the Alpha Team episode, Atlantis is in the Aqua Zone episode, and so on. And as cliche as this is to say, if you really want to see certain themes done and I don't ever get to it, make your own video. I'm not gonna stop anyone from making their own rewinds so long as they call it something else. Okay, so all that bile and bitterness out of the way, it's still been a fun journey so far. I've learned a few tricks that hopefully make these videos more fun to watch and less like a slideshow. Little skills I'll apply to all the videos I make in the future. My channel was never that big until December 2017, when I uploaded that Battle Angel video in response to all the people who didn't understand the series I love and got a bad impression from the movie's first trailer. Before then, I think I still had around 7,000 subs. Now I have more than 21,000. In just over a year, I've tripled, and that's mostly from LEGO Rewind. But look, subs aren't everything, and I realize many of my recent subs came here for one thing, and I have some bad news for those people. The show isn't over yet, but it won't keep going for much longer. I was originally going to end things with this season, and just make it a little longer than the first, like 17 episodes. But I found just enough themes I'm interested in covering to eke out one more season. In fact, it'll be slightly longer than these two, 14 episodes this time, and we're going to see some things I never thought I'd rewind when I started this. You're going to see a couple of licensed themes. You're going to see a couple of more recent themes. More of space, more of everything, really. And you're going to see a finale that will dwarf any other episode in the series. But yeah, after episode 40, no more LEGO Rewind. Considering I didn't think we'd make it past 30 though, I'd say that's pretty good. I might on occasion release something related to LEGO after that, maybe show off some of my mods, but I'm gonna have to come up with another series. I bought a few sets from Atlantis and other themes, but I can't review those after modifying the heck out of them. This is ineligible for review because it's no longer what you'd get in the store, and I don't want to undo all the work I've done and take it apart all over again. I like how it looks now. And I can't become a LEGO review channel long term anyway, because I don't have space for any more of this stuff, and it's a huge waste of money if it isn't stuff I really want to keep. The thing new viewers need to understand is I am not, stay with me now, not a LEGO channel. I know that sounds weird, since if you're relatively new here, all you've seen me upload lately is LEGO content, but that is not my entire channel, not my entire body of work by a long shot. It wasn't always this way. LEGO Rewind is an outing, a phase. It started a while ago, and it'll end a while from now, like any phase. I've been here on YouTube for a long time. Before someone in my family accidentally killed my first channel by deleting the Gmail account connected to it, I was making crappy videos here in 2008, and my viewer base is that old too. Many of my old fans and friends accompanying me to Aqua Magna and then Planet Ripple. And I have no doubt some of those fans who have stuck with me for so long are getting a little tired of the homogenized LEGO content of late, and want my upcoming content to be more diverse like it used to be. Movie reviews, game reviews, topical videos, writing essays. I've fallen precisely into the trap I ranted about in summer 2017, uploading the same content over and over again, and frequently enough for the algorithm to reward my consistency. I had little to no sense of direction at the time I made that video, and I didn't know where I'd go next. That was before I'd even thought up LEGO Rewind, and at the rate I'm going, pretty soon, I'd say around the end of summer 2019, just 2 years later, I'll be right back in that same exact spot. And if the Western episode made one thing clear, a pretty big chunk of my recent subs don't know me. Not really, and maybe only like me as long as I'm saying what they want me to say, aren't interested in anything else I might do, and that I can expect a huge drop in support once Rewind ends and I shift gears in any other direction. And that's scary. Like, have I peaked already? Is this the best my channel will ever perform? And it's all downhill from here? This whole time I've kept thinking my time hasn't come yet, but did it already pass? I'll still review a video game now and then, but that scene is so played out I'm not sure where to go with that. My Odalis and Aquaria reviews, for example, have floundered and drained so much energy out of me. They're just much harder videos to make. It wouldn't leave me any time to work on Planet Ripple or anything else if I made videos like those too often. Maybe I should work on videos about writing? Or hey, maybe finally make some Planet Ripple videos, huh? It's such a big part of what I do, but I barely talk about it here, aside from a shameless plug at the end of every episode. Point is, a year from now, the landscape of this channel is going to look very different. LEGO Rewind will be just another playlist, as we move on to the next phase of Nick on whatever. I'm telling you this now, not waiting till the last minute, so you can prepare yourselves. And I'm just wondering how many of you will be willing to accompany me on the next leg of this journey, or if I'll be going it alone. But for now, there's still more work to be done, still more history to look forward to. 14 episodes, one more season, and when it's over, I'll hopefully have left my mark on the LEGO community. Join me, won't you? See you around in season 3, which probably won't be long from now knowing me. We're going out with a bang. If you want to support my work, please consider my graphic novel series Planet Ripple. You can buy the books on Amazon or read an early draft of the first book for free. Links to everything in the description. Next time, I'm gonna let that be a surprise, as we literally break the mold in a big way. Toodles!
"10 a.m. May the 5th. The good people of Legoland Town are peacefully going about their business when...
Jailbreak! Babyface Molten is on the run! Return home! Lock all doors!
With a notorious convict at large, emergency services are on red alert. Streets are searched. Roads are blocked. Legoland waits silently in fear. But thanks to the long arm of the law, Babyface is swiftly apprehended and put back behind bars. Collect Legoland. It's like living in your own town.